sisters and friends, welcome to the County Grand Lodge of Central Scotland podcast. Tonight on the show, we have brother Stan Gordon, myself, sister Lindsay Glenn, brother Graham Reid, and our special guest tonight is Michael Rosie.
Hi, Lindsay.
How are you doing?
Michael, how are you?
Nice to
see
you on the show.
Good to see you.
Stan.
Nice to
Lindsay,
meet you.
nice to see you again.
Yep, you too. Our guest this evening is somewhat many of you will have seen around the orange circles. You may have seen him at many of our parades with his lovely wee man satchel strapped across his chest, taking lots of pictures. He has also given talks at various conferences and seminars held by the Orange Order. He is no stranger personally to me, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Michael Rosie, Senior Lecturer in Sociology at the University of Edinburgh.
Well, thank you for that. Lovely. I've actually got my man bag with me, so never go anywhere without it.
I did notice that.
Michael, give us a wee bit of background on yourself before we carry on. Could you give us a wee bit of background?
Sure, yeah. I was born in Caithness in the far north of Scotland, but I grew up in the suburbs of Edinburgh. I got interested when I eventually got to university. I got interested in issues about religion and politics in Scotland. We often bury them under the S word, sectarianism words. I got very interested in that, wrote a book about sectarianism, ended up getting a doctorate and becoming an academic. What really changed things for me was BBC Radio Scotland, about 20 years ago, made an excellent series called Unpeeling the Orange, about the Orange Order at the time that Ian Wilson was Grand Master. And they came to my office with all the lovely equipment and they interviewed me as an expert, and I pontificated and told them all kinds of stuff about the Orange Order. And after they left, I thought, I'm an expert in the Orange Order. I've watched a few parades. I've never met an orange man or an orange woman, to my knowledge. So there came a kind of, I was feeling guilt. How can I be an expert about an organisation that I don't actually
know much about,
engage with, or know anything more than the general public might think they know? So a good few years later, when I was advising the Scottish Government, I got the opportunity to kind of watch parades and speak to people, particularly Robert McLean, who was the executive officer at the time, and Robert and I go way back now, a good 10 years. So that gave me an opportunity to see behind the scenes a little bit about how the big parades were organised. I then thought, there's gold here for an academic. This is a really interesting organisation. And started trying to kind of get to speak to people, which took me a bit of a while. But I remember Ian Wilson once saying to me that I was, quote, that guy. People kept coming up to him and saying, "Oh, that guy was at the parade." And they didn't know who I was, but it turns out it was me and my man bag. So I've been hanging around, I guess, the Orange Order for the better part of 11 or 12 years, and trying to write a book when I can find time to write it.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Obviously, I said in the intro as well, you are a doctor in the field of sociology, an area I need to admit I know absolutely nothing about. What got you interested in that field in the world of academia?
Probably when I left school at 16, I got a job with a leading high street bank. I won't name them, won't give them the free advertising, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. So I ended up going to college almost as an escape in my early 20s, and just really enjoying going back to learning stuff. I ended up almost accidentally thinking I'll go to university at the time when there was student grants, so it was actually worth your while. And I just got the bug then. I didn't go to do sociology. I didn't know what sociology was then either. Not sure I do now.
No.
But
still don't.
I went to do politics, and actually I discovered that politics that I was being taught was really quite dull, whereas this course called sociology was looking at things like class and religion and gender, and how people organised and how the world was changing, and social mobility, how people from working class backgrounds like myself, were ending up in professional jobs, like I've ended up. So all of that just really fascinated me, and I went to university in October 1992, and I've never left.
That's been you.
That's been me.
So obviously, through sociology, this led you to the introduction into the Orange Order through the study of the impact of the parades and communities. How were you then selected to lead this study by the government?
The government basically picked two or three key figures. One was Duncan Morrow, who's an academic, a political scientist at University of Ulster. The other one was a leading figure in the Kin 40 Institute, which is a Catholic organisation in, I want to say Coatbridge, but I may be slightly, no, it's Coatbridge.
My hometown.
Your hometown, yeah, and a fine place. I've been to Coatbridge many times since there. And one of the people that they approached to do it had previously worked with me. She was an academic, really lovely academic that had worked on faith groups in Glasgow and kind of, looking at the range of faith groups, how big they were, what the council could do for them. So through that person, I was kind of invited to come along. Rosanna Cunningham, when she first introduced the group to the press, called me the skeptic on the group. The group was on sectarianism, and I said I prefer to be the sort of, she called me the cynic on the group, and I said the skeptic. We all know what sectarianism is, but it's a funny beast when you try and grab it. It kind of disappears. And also, no one is a sectarian. It's always someone else. No one, wears that badge. It's always someone else. So I got involved in that group and was pretty much able within that to choose a couple of sectors. And the two sectors I chose was policing and parading, because they're both things that I'm very interested in.
I mean, see, do you have any perception or understanding or knowledge of the Orange Order prior to starting your study?
Oh, who doesn't?
Was it just going to watch parades, or did you know anything like that were rituals or anything that stands for what people join?
I always thought, and I certainly don't want to offend any of your listeners, but before I did the study, very much, the Orange Order were Freemasons with extra colourful aprons. Now obviously that's not the case, but much of my knowledge of the Orange Order, I'm thinking the comic character that some of your older listeners will remember, Mason Boyne. As being a kind of drunken, aggressive, sort of violent figure. But also that parades were always seen as a bad thing. You would always get in the Edinburgh press, there's a parade, there will be disruption. But I started watching. I remember there was the County Grand Lodge of the East must have paraded in Edinburgh in 1998, and at a time that I was a postgraduate student, and I remember especially going along and not just watching it, but kind of taking it in, following it up, going to the public meeting on the Meadows, listening and actually talking to people. I remember at the time feeling totally out of my depth, that these were not people that I could speak to. But years later, about 15 years later, when I started speaking to probably the same people, I was much more confident and probably much more open-minded as well to find out what makes people join this organisation, stay in this organisation, parade publicly up the street. It's not a secret organisation when you walk up and down the streets of your hometown.
I don't know about yourself, Graham, but I can see a massive difference over the years. I joined the Lodge at an early age, and I played in the band and all that. And I can remember going to play Glasgow Big Parade, for example, Edinburgh, and then in the 72, 74 and things like that. And there was drink all over the park, and it was just a mess, and it wasn't as organised as it is now and drilled as good as it is. Do you find that?
Absolutely, Stan. I don't think you get away with that kind of behaviour nowadays. And then how it managed all those years ago, I don't know. But thankfully, the institution and the parades and the organisation of it, and even the spectators, I guess, as well, everybody's stepped up to the bar and raised the standard, because society's changed. As I said, I don't think you get away with that behaviour.
I can actually mind one of my first parades at the band was with the band. Well, I was with the Lodge, but the first time with the band, we paraded with Stonehouse Orange Lodge, and we got on the bus. Went from Blantyre, and we had a few. I was too young, but the older guys in the bus had a few beers, and they would say, "Oh, you are too young. You can have a can of cider," and that's just the way it was then. And then we went to Stonehouse, and I remember we went to the Burgomaster's house, and all the younger ones were all excited and all that. And then we got on the bus, and all the beer and the drink came on the bus, and that was the band saying, "Don't give a band fee for playing, just give drink." That culture is just completely away now. It's no. How did you find it?
That's exactly what it's like. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a bit long waiting about in the park and different things, but it is definitely a different culture nowadays to when I was growing up as a young girl.
I think thankfully.
Coatbridge as well.
Yeah. No, I definitely. I don't get me wrong, I loved it at that age, and that was just the way things were in the days. But it has come a long way. I think since
Definitely.
Absolutely, and it's
And I think it's probably come a longer way than society as a whole, because if you go out late at night in any major urban area in Scotland, you will see people absolutely belting it out.
Yeah.
Drinking far too much, etc. And the Orange Order, I think every parade that I've seen has been, at worst, really well organised.
Yeah.
And the best ones are well organised, peaceful, colourful, and people turn out and watch it and enjoy it.
And I think they don't do in Scotland. You'll have seen yourself if you go to Northern Ireland. There's a hell of a lot of the lodges over there are temperance lodges, and there's no drink at all. And you'll go to the Word of Master Seuss, and there'll be a cup of tea and a cup of coffee and or a glass of juice, and they just don't drink. And I find it's different there and all. They take it very, very serious there also, and
I think there's a country-town difference in Northern Ireland as well. In Ulster, that all the country lodges tend to be more traditional.
and family, and a wee bit more into church side of things, and even in the 12th of July, they'll do their wee parade, and they'll maybe even go to the church village hall for their buffet and a bite to eat. It's completely different for Glasgow and South Lanarkshire and Ayrshire and Edinburgh.
I think it's all about the occasion as well. And I think we would certainly like to see the day more of a family occasion, if you like, or more of a full day rather than people just see it as the parade.
Like a gala, day sort of thing. Graham, can I just ask then,
Sure.
what, just tell our viewers, what is your background in the order? What's your position at the moment?
I'm County Grand Lodge Secretary, County Grand Lodge of Central Scotland. I had that position for 4 years. I was Deputy Secretary before that. Same as Stan, joined the institution as a young man 40 years ago, believe it or not. Got grey hair to show for the 40 years. But third generation, like so many honest men, honest ladies, 2 or 3 generations, my father, my grandfather, his brothers, my grandfather's brothers, all within the same lodge. So, and come up through the ranks, juveniles, juniors. Again, that was the way you did it these days. And then into the adult section, 1981. And loved every minute of it. It's been great.
Can I quickly ask you? You mentioned all of 3 generations of men. What about women in the Orange Order? In your family?
None.
None.
But I mean, there are. I mean, when I was in the juvenile lodges, I'm sure Lindsay would be a testament in Coatbridge. It was the families that ran it. It was the mother or the gran, and then all the family then follow on. So it certainly wasn't just Orange men that's got tradition. It's the sisters as well. Many of them kept the youth sections going and have been stalwarts in the institution for years and years. So.
Totally agree. As an outsider, I mean, the women make things run. You can see
100%.
Absolutely. And I think they should be more on the front line as well.
What about yourself, Lindsay? You're Ladies Lodge. When did you join? And what's your background?
I'm Ladies Lodge 73, Coatbridge, so James Craig's own chosen few. I've been right through the juveniles, juniors, joined into the adult lodge at 16. I actually went into Sister Gallagher Memorial 184 at 16, but then I transferred to my mum's lodge later in life. So I'm actually a past mistress in my lodge as well. And I've also taken up various other roles. Started off in the juveniles. I was secretary, chaplain, done a lot of Bible reading competitions, loads of medals, trophies. It really was good for the kids, like for your confidence and stuff. I've got boxes full of trophies and awards and different things growing up. And then just carried straight into the adult lodge. And as I say, I've had various different posts. Started up the ranks, substitute mistress, deputy mistress, and mistress as well. So I've at 24, 25 years
Wow.
in the adult lodge.
I think that's something. One of our first discussions, Michael, you spoke about members and the family background, the family orientation behind it, and that's something you did. If it was in the lodge as a young man, a young lady, up through the ranks, and because your parents were involved in the institution, and that was what you did.
Aye, definitely.
What about yourself, Stan? What?
I was the same as yourself. I joined the juveniles at 15 or 14. I went through juveniles and I transferred obviously into the big lodge, and then I was the youngest past master in Blantyre an early age of 20. I don't know if I'll still are or no. But the first year when I took the chair, 293 Lodge, I'm in, won the Rose Bowl for the biggest attendance. And I must have only been 20, 21. And I remember at that time, I was the youngest worldly master in Blantyre. So I don't know. I need to check it, see. And I was the same as yourself. My dad was in it, my mum was in the Orange Order. My dad's still there, and I'm there, and my boy's there, So it's the same thing. It's like 3 generations. My dad's 83, but he still tries to attend. He's still 83, and I was actually there last night in my own, so still a good attender.
Absolutely.
So we'll go back to yourself, Michael. So how were you initially received by the Grand Lodge in the first instance? I do assume there was maybe a wariness and a wee bit of scepticism at first with yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Robert McLean, who I'm extremely fond of, was one of the key gatekeepers, and he certainly, I think, was a little bit cautious, shall we say, which I totally understand. I made the mistake as a researcher of saying, I want to do some research, I want to interview people, I want to write articles. I mean, that's what academics do, right? But of course, that was heard as, I'm a journalist, talk to me. And, nobody in this room needs to know that, the media like a bad Orange Order story. Bad news sells. I just had to be absolutely persistent. I became very good friends with Ian Wilson and with, because I'm in Edinburgh, and J.G. McLean and Helen McLean.
Yep.
And all 3 of them have been incredibly kind in terms of lifts given, texts here and there saying, there's this event, there's that event. So it really was persistence. But I think the big breakthrough for me was actually with David Bryce in Olympia House, because Olympia House had, it's now all in storage, an incredible archive, a really rich historical archive of the Orange Order, something that there is real treasure in there for your community and your people, and hopefully in time that will find some kind of place. But I was angling at getting access to some of these records to help with my research, and I think I must have had 5 times I went through to Brigton from Edinburgh to be kind of met upstairs in Olympia House with a cup of tea and David Bryce, who would engage me in a long conversation, and I wasn't getting into the archive, I was having a long conversation. And to be honest, and what he was doing was he was very carefully and rigorously screening me. He was posing me quite difficult questions, testing me out. Who is, is this guy what he says he is? Is he going to do what he says he's going to do? And then I think on the 5th time, and to be honest, I was getting a wee bit fed up with this. I came through thinking, right, if they don't let me in that magic room today, then I'm just going to call it off. And I got the cup of tea, but I got the cup of tea in that room, and he just said, I'll be next door if you need me. So the door just opened. So the institution, I think, was very, very, very careful for understandable reasons about who it lets in through the doors. Some English academics have called this the Orange Spring from about 20 years ago, that the Orange Order globally has become much more confident and skilled at actually reaching out and saying to people, look, we have a history. You can come and look at us. We've got nothing to hide. And certainly I found an awful lot of kindness in Olympia House. David Bryce, of course, has passed on. Other people that I worked with day to day have passed on or moved on. Of course, Olympia House is gone, but I'm very, very grateful for the institution for giving me that access, but also taking the care that it did about giving access. But after that, I mean, I talked to just about anyone I wanted to talk to. They kind of knew who I was, or at least they could phone David Bryce or Robert McLean or Ian Wilson or J.G. McLean or whoever and say, who is that guy with a man bag? And they would say, it's all right, you can talk to him.
So how did you find the engagement from our members then? Were they welcoming enough, accommodating and assisting you with your study? And
they have been brilliant. I think as soon as I became well enough known to enough people, and people like Graham as well, people at the county lodges as well, and elsewhere, just wandering up to people on the field at a parade and talking to people who would introduce me to people, and I think more than this is quite difficult for an academic to negotiate, because I'm doing a job, but at the same time I'm a human being, and most of the human beings I'm meeting are genuine, nice people who want to be welcoming, who want to talk to me. I was saying to Graham on the way here, certain figures who will remember you and will ask after my family, will say, how's your wee boy doing? What age is your wee boy doing? Or know which football team, so they'll maybe commiserate about how badly Hearts are doing or whatever. so there is a sense that whilst I am an outsider, I'm not a member of the institution or the community. That's just not my background. I am kind of regarded as a friend, and I've got many, many friends in the Orange Order and the other loyal orders. It was my birthday the other day. It's okay because Graham did send me a nice wee message on Facebook, but I got more messages on Facebook from people I've met through this research than I did from my own friends. And family. So in a sense, I recognise it's a family, and I've been treated as a guest in a really kind way, and that of course has changed a lot of my preconceptions.
Do you think we're a lot more open now?
I think so, Stan. I think you had to be. But to touch on what Michael's just said, I think it's a two-way street. I think people, certainly my dealings with Michael, he's always been very open, and it's not all been just sugar and sweetness and stuff like that. Well, there's some tough decisions or tough opinions have been expressed on where we can improve. And I think, but you've been very open in any dealings we've had, and I think it does spread because you have to be open. We're trying to appeal now to the younger generation, because sure, Stan will mind me saying, Stan and I are not any younger.
Yeah.
There's nobody any younger, but we need to. The world's changing, and we need to
adapt.
We need to adapt. We need to keep up. Basically.
I remember a few years back there, I think just before the pandemic, I thought was great, and we were discussing the parades in Blantyre, and the way the parade goes, you're going by a couple of Catholic churches, and years ago they were wanting to do something that they never have done. They were going to go to Chapel House and chap the door and speak to the priest and say, look, we're going to walk by here, we don't want any bother. If you've got a service on, would you kindly let us play, or we'll stop courtesy and we'll come and go with each other. Now, you would never have seen that 20, 30 years ago.
I think the important thing is, and Michael's studies probably found this as well, we're part of the community, but being part of the community brings responsibilities. You can't be a part of the community just when it suits you or for your own ends, so you have to be part of the community and show responsibility to the other parts of the community who might not agree with you, and be respectful at all times. And I think that too has improved over the years, I think.
I think that's one of the main things. I mean, Coat Bridge, Lindsay, we touched on it earlier on there. It's not known as a orange orientated area. If anybody mentions Coat Bridge, everybody automatically thinks that you're a lover of your religion,
Of culture.
But you have got 5 or 6 big lodges there, haven't you? Male and female.
Aye, we've got ladies' lodges, men's lodges. Aye, but 5 or 6 plus bands as well.
Yeah, and how do you
Between
find it in
Coatbridge and
Coat Bridge
Brigade.
now? Is it a lot quieter than it used to be when you were younger?
Of course it is. I think everything's a lot quieter now. The numbers are down everywhere, I think, but it's trying to do new things and trying to keep everybody interested. But it's a hard one, because I don't really want to really get into too much, but I think to try and get younger ones through the door, and I think the likes of this sort of thing, explaining maybe a wee bit more of what we're about, and like being an organisation that's not just about going out parading and bands and drink, and trying to make it about families and the heritage and teaching. But it's different. When I was in the juveniles, you were kind of brought up where you were getting taught everything through the juveniles, so you knew a wee bit about it before you even went into the adult lodges. Now I'm finding you're actually getting people in that just they don't know enough about it. So it's maybe even encouraging lodges a wee bit to give them a wee bit about the background and the history. Just because they're maybe in the same religion doesn't mean to say they know everything. They know about what the order stands for and what it's about. So it's about teaching people and getting them to learn and get involved.
As I said earlier, I think you could actually take a lot of lessons from Northern Ireland when you see what you were talking about, some of the village lodges and stuff like that, how they operate. Because they seem to be hassle free, and it's just a culture and part of their life that the community embraces it, and I think we could learn a lot of lessons there. I love nothing more than going to somewhere I've never been to before in Northern Ireland and meeting brothers and sisters and talking to them about. I mean, a lot of them have got farms and stuff like that there. That's their come together. That's their daily life. Going to church on a Sunday and being part of the Orange
That's
Order.
another thing a lot of people don't
amazing.
realise as well, is that the Orange Order is based around the Bible, and a lot to do with religion is based on church and different things.
I think it's very frustrating as an Orangeman. You guys are with the same Orange woman and Orange man, obviously. You hear people describing us. You've heard it before, probably, Michael, about knuckle draggers. They don't know. They don't know us. They don't know people. And they'll shout insults without knowing me or knowing who I'm with or whoever. And as Lindsay said, one of the lodges, and as well as many lodges, contribute to the Orange Home Fund, particularly the Sister Gallagher Memorial in Coatman's district. People don't want to know that. They don't want to hear that. I mean, you mentioned about drunks and stuff like that. Last couple of years, the arrests at parades have been minimal, if any at all.
But nothing major either. Urinating and stuff, and there's not been nothing.
That's when the parade's been a success, when there's nothing in the papers about it.
I think what's needing to be more in the papers is how much a charitable organisation where that could maybe be getting put out there a wee bit more, because our organisation does so much for various different charities. Obviously, we've got our own charity, the Scottish Orange Home Fund as well. I mean, we even send our elderly sisters as well and brothers. They get to go to the log cabin and stuff like that. But we do a lot of charity work, and our own sisters do charity work within their own churches as well, and different things, that we all support and help out with. So it's not even just about supporting the organisation. We help support our sisters who are also supporting other charities.
I've quite often spoken to Orange audiences and said, the world needs to know how much charitable work goes on. That's and often get the response, which I totally understand, is saying we're not doing it for publicity, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. From the outside, though, I can remember going and watching a lodge in Parkhead. I think it was a centenary parade. This was very early in my research. I didn't really speak to anyone. And in front of their parade, they had a big Macmillan Cancer banner, and they had buckets, and they had a young woman associated with the lodge going around collecting money. I probably collected a couple of £100, which went to a cause that has touched most of our lives. And I remember mentioning that to an academic colleague, and his view was, God, that's cynical, i.e. to hide behind charitable work. And I was like, no, they were collecting from buckets. So there is a real perception gap between, I think, what people, particularly middle class people who just look down on things like the Orange Order, or look down on working class people in general, that they just can't actually see what's going on. Graham will have heard me tell the story quite a lot, because an academic came and knocked on my door, not one from Owen University, on my office door, and said, "Oh, are you the fella who's studying the Orange Order?" And I was like, "Yes." And her follow-up line was, "I don't know how you can bear to be in the same room as these people."
Right.
I'll pause for breath there. And my response was, "Those people are as human as you or I." At which she got very flustered, because that was not the response she expected. She expected me to go, "Oh yes, it's awful. I have to eat all these steak pies and drink a pint of beer and listen to people talking about their families, etc." So there really is a perception gap.
We're a very Christian charitable organisation, and a lot of outsiders who are not a part of the community just don't realise that. They don't see that.
Who may themselves neither be Christian nor charitable.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a general issue, I think, that you touched on there, Lindsay, that's really interesting, is maybe two generations ago, young people might have come into the loyal orders who had been at Sunday school, so they had a little bit of kind of Christian education, who may have been in the Boys Brigade, for example. Yep. All of that's gone. All of that has disappeared. When I was at school in the 1970s, primary school, I was fairly unusual because my family didn't go to church. So it was probably a minority. Now that's a very, very strong minority. My son is 4 generations away from church going. in the family, and that's becoming more and more common. So actually there's a challenge for any Christian organisation, indeed any religious organisation, which is to try and inform and educate people and show people the attraction of their own institution, because they're not getting that in the places that they used to get it. They're not getting it at school or Sunday school.
I was just about to say that. I don't think that they're getting it enough, because there's so many different gender things going on and different things. They're not getting, like when I went to school, you had your assemblies and you would do your hymns. You would have hymns. It was assembly and stuff.
You had RE, religious education.
Yeah, well, you still get religious education at high school, but even in the primary schools, you don't get that in a non-denominational primary school anymore. I think that side of things is all gone, which was a big factor growing up. I think that gave you a wee bit of respect when you had your assemblies and you were learning about the hymns you were singing and different things. It hits home.
The unfortunate thing there is it's not just the Protestant churches, the Catholic churches, any Christian churches are struggling at the moment. Their members are dropping everywhere.
But I will tell you, the Catholic
Christian
schools, though, the Catholic schools, every morning they say their prayers and they have assemblies and they still do their hymns and they still have, during their assemblies, sing all the old songs that I remember singing.
I didn't know that.
They do every morning, and I do know that.
They still have the structure.
They have that structure.
They have a structure, but whilst these are great schools in terms of the education that the pupils get, I have to say they're not very good schools at producing Catholics, because as Stan says, you can see the secularizing figures. This is part of what I do as an academic, is you can see that it's maybe a generation after it's hit Protestant churches in Britain, it's now hitting the Catholic Church as well. Fewer and fewer of these kids, whether or not they go to a Roman Catholic school, fewer and fewer are then going on to marry in the Catholic Church or have their kids baptised.
Yeah,
they may still send
so it's
to
still
schools.
a decline then
So
in
there's
that.
definitely a decline
I can see that. See a big decline across the board. Everything in Christianity at the moment. I don't know the reason for it, but as you say, I think there's a generation skip now, and it's getting worse. I mean, I'm next door neighbour that was brought up with. I was at his funeral there 2 weeks ago, and his mother was at the Catholic Church every week, every Sunday, maybe twice, and all the family were made to go, and it was a minister that buried him. And I didn't think for the life of me I'd have ever seen that. And for whatever reason, he didn't want to be buried a Roman Catholic. And I couldn't believe it. And I remember what you were talking about years and years ago when I was younger. You would be playing football on the street, and it'd be the same for yourself, Graham. You'd be playing football in the street, and it would get 6 o'clock or whatever time it was, and you were getting into a good game of football. And then the mothers would come out and shout, John, Patrick, Peter, Chapel. And they were greeting, I don't want to go. But you didn't see that now.
No.
I don't think they're actually forced to go the way they were.
Some are,
years ago.
not as many, but some are.
I think the whole world going back compared to 40 years ago, it's unrecognisable.
Again, especially school, because on a Friday they go to mass, the kids from school, and the father is very much involved within the primary school teaching. He comes and does assemblies as well and different things, maybe Easter, Christmas, various times he gets involved. Whereas, like, from my side, when my daughter being obviously non-denominational school, our minister did get involved, but we had the girls' brigade, boys' brigade, but our kids went over. But it wasn't like every Friday. It wasn't like a regular occurrence, is what it is from the Catholic perspective. They go religiously every Friday to mass from school.
My son is 10, and I don't think I actually don't know whether the school trust has a religious figure on it. The local minister is very nice. I don't think he's involved at all with the school. Right next to his school is a wee Roman Catholic primary. He's got lots of friends there, and what's really interesting is they are really quite mixed at that school. So I've got friends who are actually Presbyterian. Put their kids to that school because it's an excellent school, but it does have some kind of ethos. My son's school is just, you can call it non-denominational if you want, it's actually secular. But it just doesn't seem to have any...
That's something you wouldn't have seen years ago anyway. It was strictly a Roman Catholic school. It wasn't, you couldn't get anybody else. It was non-denominational go, and that's changed now.
Certainly changed in the east of Scotland because there just simply isn't enough Catholic children to maintain the schools, so they have to open it up to others.
Yeah.
So there's kind of religious choice, but it's kind of through a back door. It's maybe not
So this is us kind of coming then to like how your study has went then. So what has your findings particularly been then in respect to the Orange Order? What's your findings from your study?
I think and Graham has heard much of this at all, but I think it's an institution that has a very, very clear public perception of it. And I think when you go closer to the institution, as I have, and spend a bit of time, you start seeing much different things. So parades are obviously, if you like, the window dressing of the institution, but there's lots and lots and lots going on inside the shop. There's lots of community stuff, lots of fellowship, lots of friendships, lots of sociability, support for more vulnerable members who are maybe older, or have hit bad times. I've seen an awful lot of good community work going on there. That's kind of invisible from the outside. It may also be invisible from the inside, because that's just what you do. And I think that my big finding is that the broad perception is pretty misplaced, certainly for the Orange Order now. We can go back in time, and it may have been slightly different, but at the moment, this is an institution that puts a lot of positives into the community, not just its own community, but through charitable work, through reaching out, through renting its halls to all kinds of pensioner groups, etc. And maybe the Orange Order needs to wear that on their sleeve a little bit more clearly, so that those outside, like myself, can see it.
Yeah, definitely. A wee touch on the parades, Graham. What did you think of the Lark Hall parade?
I thought it was very good, Stan. The crowds were unbelievable. As we knew, there'd be good crowds. The only thing we didn't know was the weather, and the weather stayed by and large overall good. The crowds were great. The lodges were immaculate, as were the bands. Absolutely fantastic. I don't think the day could have gone any better. We also attended a couple of other parades, Glasgow. Unfortunately, the Ayrshire went for Snargell and the East were on the same day, so we couldn't go to both of them. But our friends went to one and I went to the other. And again, all the feedback was really good. The crowds seemed to have been up way above expectations, I think, as well. And obviously with Glasgow as well. And everything seems to have gone well. But our own parade, Lark Hall came out in force, and we had a thoroughly enjoyable day, a big success. And the feedback from all parties has been good. Stakeholders are all happy, and it's back to the community again. You're impacting on the community, and if the community are happy and see what you're doing to organise your event professionally and in a dignified manner, then you shouldn't have any problems. And said all the feedback has been very good. Do
you think, what Lindsay touched on earlier, do you think the time we're spending in the park is a bit longer? We went back to our own members and we had a great parade and we loved it, but there's a lot of older members here, and to stand in the park 2.5 hours before you march, I think it's a long time. I mean, I'm 61, but there are a lot of older members here, and it's just a wee bit too much for them.
I think it's something we're certainly actively looking at just now, and I think if it's we're talking about it earlier on this morning, that if there's one thing could change, what would change? That's what I'd like to be certainly looking at, because it is a long while. The last couple of years we've tried to make, I spoke earlier on about enhancing the experience of the Boyne celebrations, not just a parade, it's a full day. And we're putting different things in the park. We've the Decade Amateur Band playing in the park. We've looked at other different bits and pieces. Of course, we're all prisoners to the weather, aren't we? So if we bring in something, entertainment or whatever,
and it's raining,
it's going to be the proverbial damp squib.
Yeah.
But we are certainly conscious. We've had some feedback that it is, and it can be a long time. The only thing I would say to that is with any major event, and I used football as an example, you don't turn up at a big match 5 minutes before the game ready just to win. I get a good parking space. We're impacting road closures and minor disruption to an area. We have to have everything in place so that everybody's there on time, so the parade can move unhindered. But it's like everything else. We'd certainly look at that. It's but that is one of the points.
If there were one point I'd have picked on Larko, that's the only thing I'd have picked on, Lindsay.
I very much enjoyed the parade in Larkhall. I thought it was just the
Yeah, it was.
right length as well for your feet and everything. I enjoyed it. It wasn't, us ladies like to wear heels and stuff. So the only thing is roads are terrible just now, aren't they? Everywhere, not just everywhere. They just need to fix all these roads. Just trying to walk on them.
Yeah, and I done Larkhall again maybe about 3 weeks after it with the Blacks with the band, and the weather was completely different. It was really
So that
wet, and we get soaked. And to think 3 weeks before it was scorching in Larkhall for our main demonstration. It was absolutely brilliant.
Can I ask you then, Michael? Do you believe then that the Orange Order still is relevant within the 21st century and has a place and a role in society in a modern Scotland?
Yeah, of course it does. You often will hear people say, the Orange Order's in the wrong time and in the wrong country, which is a very strange thing to say. This is all about Ireland and it's all about 1690 and it's all about this. Well, that's only if you look at as I was saying, the very surface of the parade. But, it's much more than just a commemoration of those events. It's very much a history. I often say sometimes Orange men and women are a little bit uncomfortable about this, but the Orange Order are the largest Irish diasporic community in Scotland, right? You are an institution that came literally from Ireland in 1798, but also it's very, very clear that up until a century ago, it was dominated by people who were born or whose parents had been born in Ireland. This is a large ethnic, and I don't use that in any negative sense, an ethnic organisation. Obviously, it has lots of members who won't have roots necessarily.
Decades ago.
Because it's grown. I always think that any positive society values its diversity. Difference is a strength, it's not a weakness. Scotland has changed remarkably in all our lifetimes, and I think the Irish contribution to that, in this case the Protestant Irish contribution to building modern Scotland, is one that's largely invisible. So I think there's actually more contribution organisations like the Loyal Orders can do to kind of highlight the history that we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. We've all come from somewhere, and actually being different shouldn't be a threat. It should be something we embrace. I'm not a Protestant. I don't feel particularly British, but I can look at my neighbours who are and find common cause and etc. So and they can be what they want to be, and let me be what I want to be.
Well, that was coming to the next. I know you've had many conversations and discussions that you are a supporter of independence. So as you know, obviously that is something that we in the Orange Order as opposed like supporters of the union, that's what we stand for. So have your political views had any bearing at all on your relationship with the institution?
I think they do, because underlying my political views, I would call myself a social democrat. I'm someone of the left of the political spectrum, but I'm very much a Democrat. I believe in difference. I believe in human rights. I believe in talking to people as equals and trying to understand. This is why I became a sociologist, what the world looks from where they're sitting. I might never fully understand that, but rather than sort of say, I disagree with that person, I'll think, wonder why they say that. And in doing that, it then reflects on me. I mean, it's interesting you mention independence, because through much of this research, when I've talked to Orange audiences, I've deliberately made a joke. I'm quite a jokey person. Of pointing towards the exit and saying, I'm just checking, I know where the exit is here, right? I know where I'm going. My name is Michael Rosie. I'm a left-wing SNP voting, yes, supporting academic, and then making a pretend that I'm running out. I've always been absolutely honest about my own political background, just because I don't want anyone to be not to understand what I'm doing and why I'm there. Am I still pro-independence? Well, our politics, I'm straying off topic here, but our politics at the moment is an absolute shambles. And if there was a referendum, a second independence referendum tomorrow, I have no idea how I would vote. So yes, I've been yes. I was yes in 2014. I have no idea if I'm yes again now. That's nothing to do with my contact with the Orange Order and everything to do with the way our politics seems to be sliding down a big hill.
Mm-hmm.
Based on your current knowledge of the Orange Order, do you at times feel we can be unfairly treated in the press
Oh,
in some
absolutely.
political circles?
Yeah, absolutely. The press, media go for a bad story. Good news does not sell, right? Man is kind to dog does not sell. Man bites dog. That's your front page. So absolutely, and I've actually seen this in the study, much of the historical background study that I've done in my research. You can see that it's a long-standing thing. But it's also to do with the kind of shrinking of the media. I know we've got media everywhere now, but if you think we used to have hundreds of local newspapers have disappeared. They're taken over by major national newspapers, etc. So that local voice that might have actually been more sympathetic or empathetic to organisations like the Orange Order has disappeared. You've now got someone trying to sell a message to a much bigger market. The second part of your question, which I've promptly forgotten, Stan, was
Unfairly treated.
sorry, in politics. Well, there was a question in the Scottish Parliament a few years ago. I won't name names, but a backbench MSP asked the then First Minister, what should we do about the parading problem in Scotland? Is it time to have a parades commission as they have in Northern Ireland? And I wrote a piece for the Times along with Professor Sir Tom Devine. I've always got to give Tom his full title, who, as you may know, is from a different background from myself and from yourselves, that said, basically, if a parades commission is the answer, what the hell's the question? I mean, the idea that we have difficulties around parades that mirror those that were happening in Northern Ireland in the late 1990s, with violence, with soldiers having to protect particular parades or communities, people were dying. Personally, I was quite angry at that question, and the then First Minister's response, which sort of says, yes, maybe it is time to have a parades commission, because it's an absolute mischaracterisation of the way Scotland is, and a mischaracterisation of the issues that we have around marches and parades. I've been studying this for well over a decade. Marches and parades in Scotland, regardless who they're from, whether it's the Loyal Orders or anyone else, are very well organised. They're very, very professionally organised. They're very well policed, and they tend to pass without anything other than the buses being held up for half an hour because somebody's walking down the street, as is their right. So does the Orange Order get an unfair deal by much of the press and within some political circles? Absolutely. I think that's cheap politics rather than the politics that will take us as a country forward into a more democratic future.
Just the last one, a wee quick one. How's your book coming along?
The book is coming along. I mean, my problem is I've got so many other things to do, so many other responsibilities as an academic. But I've written about 75,000 words, so it's getting there. There's a lot of history in there. I conducted a lot of interviews with all kinds of members of the Loyal Orders, mainly the Orange Order, but also the other orders. That is all written up. There's some really fantastic stories in there. I've got to be careful to keep people anonymized so that people can't work out who said what, because often can be quite critical of Grand Lodge or some of the County Grand Lodges. Not Central, by the way. Everyone loves the County Grand Lodge Central. So it's coming on well. It's not as fast as I would like, but I'm really enjoying reading it because it's reminding me of so many interesting and wonderful people that I've met along the way.
I believe you had a chapter that may be dedicated to some members who attended a SOM trip with you.
Well, I was lucky enough to go on two SOM trips with LOL 37 as a guest. The first one I managed to get the university to cover the cost, which was fantastic because it was going on a wee holiday. And the second time, and of course it was Sister Mary Duckett who organised these, so just to So one of my great disappointments was having to miss the Lark Hall parade this year, because it would have been nice to have gone and thought about me. But the second time I went, I actually paid for it myself. So that probably tells you a lot about how much good time I had. That will feature in the book. There won't be a chapter, but there may well be a chapter exclusively listing the steak pies I've eaten along the way.
Listen, lads, I think we'll need to close up. But it's been fantastic talking to you, Michael, and it's a right good insight to what you're doing, and it's been great listening to you there. And Graham, yourself, fantastic.
Thanks very much, Stan. Linda.
Thanks for coming on to the podcast, and also as well for your honesty as well, Michael. That's very much appreciated, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you and hearing your views as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed the podcast tonight. I hope you have as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks for coming on, and I hope that we can do it again sometime as well. So take care, and we'll see you again very soon.
And if anyone spots a wee guy with a man bag
with a satchel,
we'll be watching for the book coming out. That's
good stuff.
Brilliant.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you. Bye bye.